There's a chair at the holiday table that nobody talks about. It used to be yours. You sat there and passed the bread and laughed at the same jokes you'd been laughing at for 30 years. And then one year you just didn't come. Maybe someone called. Maybe you watched the phone ring from across the room, screen lighting up, until it stopped. You weren't angry that day. You weren't even sad. You were tired, the kind of tired that had been building so long you couldn't find the beginning of it anymore. And somewhere between last Christmas and this one, a thought arrived so quietly you almost didn't notice it. I don't have to go back. You didn't write a letter. You didn't have the confrontation. You just stopped showing up. And the strangest part, the part that stays with you, is that the world kept turning. The sun rose, your life continued, and the family you grew up in became a place you used to live. This is the psychology behind family estrangement. The slow, deliberate disappearance of a person from the people who share their blood. Here's a way to picture how common this is. Think about the last Thanksgiving table you sat at. Picture the faces around it. Statistically, nearly 4 in 10 of those people are currently estranged from someone in their family. A parent, a child, a sibling, a grandparent. A 2025 YouGov poll confirmed that number. 38% of American adults say they've gone quiet on a family member, or a family member has gone quiet on them. That's roughly the entire population of France. Quietly absent from their own families. You probably know someone. You might be someone. A Cornell researcher named Pillemer was the first person to actually count how many families this was happening to. He called it a problem hiding in plain sight. Hiding, that's the word he used. Because even the people doing it rarely talk about it. They carry it like a private weather system no one else can see. The thing about disappearing from your family is that it almost never looks the way movies show it. No final speech. No door slammed so hard the frame cracks. No moment where everything becomes clear. It's quieter than that. Much quieter. It starts with one missed call you don't return. Then a text you read and leave sitting there. Then a birthday that slips past without acknowledgement. And you notice, and here's the thing, that no one noticed either. You stop volunteering information about your life. When they ask how you're doing, you say good and steer towards something safer. You become a polite stranger to people who share your last name. It builds slowly, quietly, over years of small moments that never got resolved. Not one bad day. Accumulated weight. You didn't plan it. You didn't sit down one morning and decide to erase your own history. You just kept choosing peace over presence, one small choice at a time, until one day you looked up and realized you hadn't spoken to your mother in 8 months. And you weren't sure you wanted to. Researchers call this long-term relational strain. You might call it exhaustion. So why does it take so long? And why, once people finally leave, do so few ever come back? Everyone has a theory about why this is happening. The most popular one is politics, that young people are cutting off their parents over a ballot. It's a tidy story. It's also mostly wrong. Among people who've gone no contact, the primary reason isn't ideology. Only 1 in 5 people names political difference as the cause. The majority point to something simpler and harder, what the relative said or did. So what is it, really? Studies looking at estrangement in adulthood found that 3/4 of people who cut off their mothers cited emotional abuse during childhood as a reason. Nearly 60% said the same about their fathers. Not a single dramatic event. Not one fight. Years, sometimes decades, of being criticized, dismissed, scapegoated, or simply not seen by the people whose job it was to see you. Here's what most conversations about estrangement miss. It isn't the problem. It's the symptom. It's what happens when every other option has been tried and failed. This didn't start in adulthood. It started earlier than that, much earlier. It started the first time you tried to tell someone in your family how you felt and were told you were too sensitive. It started when your accomplishments were met with silence and your failures were met with a lecture. It started with the slow, dawning realization that in this house, love came with conditions, and the conditions kept shifting. You learned something young, that your feelings were an inconvenience, that asking for what you needed made things worse, that the safest version of you was the quiet one, the useful one, the one who didn't make waves. So you became that person. You held that shape for years, decades, and then something shifted. Maybe you moved out. Maybe you met someone who looked at you like you were a whole person. Maybe you started therapy or read a book or heard a stranger describe their childhood and felt a chill of recognition because they were describing yours. And suddenly you had language for something you'd been living inside your entire life without knowing what to call it. Researchers who study broken attachment describe it this way. Estrangement isn't a single wound. It's the body finally naming the stress it has been carrying for years, the quiet cost of growing up in a place where you were never quite enough. Your nervous system had been running that calculation since childhood. And the moment you understood that leaving was an option, something in you began the slow walk toward the door. But here's what almost no one in this conversation wants to admit. The two sides of every estrangement don't even agree on what happened. When researchers interview estranged parents and estranged adult children separately, they get two completely different accounts of the same family. A psychologist named Shop Sullivan studied over 1,000 estranged mothers. Nearly 80% of them believed an ex-spouse or an in-law had turned their child against them. A majority believed mental health or addiction issues had distorted their child's memory. They weren't lying. They genuinely believed this. The adult children said something different. They said, "You hurt me, and you never stopped." Parents described the weather. Children described the house they lived in. Same family. Two completely different stories. One side sees an outside force that corrupted something good. The other side sees the inside of a house nobody else ever lived in. This is why reconciliation is so difficult. It's not that the two sides disagree about what to do next. It's that they don't agree on what happened. And if both people are telling the truth, if both of them genuinely believe their version, then what does that mean for finding a way back to each other? You've probably heard someone say it. Maybe your own parent. These kids today just cut people off. They don't even try. It's a comforting belief. It lets you frame estrangement as a tantrum, a phase, something that a good conversation could fix, which is, incidentally, also what people used to say about therapy and divorce and every other boundary that made someone uncomfortable. But the research tells a different story. Most people who cut contact with a parent did so in their late 20s or early 30s. These aren't teenagers storming out. These are adults who spent years trying, years in therapy, years setting limits that got ignored, years hoping something would finally change. When requests like, "Please stop criticizing my partner," or "No yelling during calls," are repeatedly dismissed, people learn that the limit setting isn't working. And after years of that, after watching the same door swing open no matter how carefully they closed it, some of them stop setting limits they know won't hold, and move to no contact. Not because it's easy, because it's the only thing left. Nobody leaves their family for sport. The people who disappear have usually tried to stay longer than anyone knows. They tried low contact. They tried the carefully worded email. They tried the family therapist. They tried coming home one more time just to see. Estrangement is what happens after all of that fails. It isn't the first option. It's the last one. Leaving doesn't feel like winning. Pillamer, after years of studying this, wrote something that stayed with me, that even people who chose estrangement, even people who would choose it again, still feel deep sadness, still long for something to have been different, still carry a grief that has nowhere to land. And it's a particular kind of grief because there's no public ceremony for it. No funeral for a living mother. No casserole brigade for a father you decided you couldn't be around anymore. You grieve in private. You carry it to work and to dinner parties and through every holiday that everyone else is spending with their families. People ask about yours, and you learn to say something vague, because the truth makes the room uncomfortable. On the other side, the parents left behind are suffering too. They replay conversations. They search for the moment it turned. They cycle through confusion and anxiety, trying to locate the thing they did wrong, and some of them search for years without ever finding it. Two people, both in pain, both telling the truth about their own experience. The tragedy isn't that one of them is lying. It's that both of them might be telling the complete truth, from completely different rooms. I think about that a lot. How two people can live through the same years, the same house, the same dinner table, and come away with memories that don't recognize each other. How the distance between those two versions of the same story can become too wide to cross. People will call you cold, selfish, ungrateful, They'll say you're following a trend. They'll say you should honor thy mother and father, as if that commandment came with no conditions attached. What they won't say because they can't know is what it cost you to stay as long as you did. You're not heartless. You're the person who cared the longest, who absorbed the most, who kept showing up to a conversation that was never going to change. No adult child walks away from their family with relief as the only thing in their chest. That isn't how it works. You didn't leave because you stopped loving them. You left because loving them at that cost was slowly unmaking you. And somewhere inside, the part of you that had been quiet for your entire childhood finally found its voice and said, I want to live. One day, years from now, someone will ask you about your family. You'll pause longer than most people do. In that half second, you'll decide how much truth the moment can hold. Maybe you'll mention a cousin you're still close to, a sibling you still call. Maybe you'll just say it's complicated and leave it there because it is and because the full map is yours to keep. You won't be the person who disappeared. You'll be the person who finally showed up for yourself, for the life you built, for the people who chose to stay. But there is still a chair at that table. Empty. And somewhere, someone is still not talking about it. That chair isn't just about absence. It's a question that neither side has fully answered yet. Whose job is it to fill it again? And do they even want to? What do you do with a grief that has no funeral, and a door that was never quite closed?